let's look at part one of your final projects and give you some feedback, and then we can revise from there. So we'll start with Simon's. There's some great ideas here. You have a few going on. We'll just zoom over here to this climb or hike. I definitely like the idea of hike more than climb. I think that was a good choice. I think you have a really solid start here with the letters going up. I might make your hiker a little bit taller. Maybe throw in, I don't know if this is the same font or not. I'm going to ungroup this really fast. Maybe make it about as tall as the letter I, so you can kind of like place your I wherever you would want it, in there, and then adjust accordingly. But I might make him a little bit taller, just to sort of really play into that's the I of your word. And then maybe a little bit of a playful is not the right word, but a little bit of a more stylized font for this, I think would go a long way as well, rather than just a pretty stiff sans serif, something that might, even just by I have these rotated a little bit, angled a little, I think with a little bit of a different, more stylized font, might work a little bit better to give it a little bit more movement kind of going up the mountain. And then I think your fire works really well. I think some potential blending. Your shapes look pretty good. I feel like you could pull them up a little bit more, distort them a little bit. Some of your angles, or not angles, but some of your flames. Even if you used some of the shapes to build that. So if you wanted a more sort of round shape at the bottom, you could use your Pathfinder tools by combining shapes. But I think some playing around maybe with your gradients. Look at some other sort of illustrated flames, and then sort of adjust your gradient accordingly. I think you have a little bit of a big spread going, especially from the brownish. I think from the red to the orange looks pretty good. I think you could kind of play around with that a little bit. And if you also individually, it looks like you might have here, but maybe more individually, play around with your gradient there to make it a little bit more natural. And then maybe like a drop shadow, like a softened drop shadow or something, to add a little bit of dimension. But I think, again, a really good start. I think I'm missing the font for the disappear, so it's kind of hard for me to tell. I like the overall idea. I feel that your other three, and we'll go to the light in just a second, I feel like your other three are a little bit stronger, so I might concentrate on one of those. Again, the light, I really like the idea of that. Even if you had... if you removed the gradient in the background and did sort of a similar thing, but if you had it, or a gradient in a shape that went to like a black, where am I going? A black to a white to a transparent, so that you could have even a light source angling coming from here. So it's like casting a light and then throwing a shadow. You could do the opposite. So you draw a shape, so the light, your drop shadow is a little bit more directional. You could kind of play with a little bit more of a global light in that sense. I was trying to grab the one behind. Oh, there you go. You have them separate. There we go. But basically, yeah, so adjust them so that they're, so that it's a little bit more global light. You kind of started to do it here, which is really interesting. So you have this kind of spreading here, this kind of spreading here, and then this a little bit, and then pushing sort of this one more, I think, to the, it's kind of tricky, but to the left, more to the left, as I see what you're doing. Again, even if you had like a directional, I'm trying to point to my screen. So if you had like a directional shape, where it was like casting a light here, and then you could have a gradient going from, darker to light, and you have your light spot. We can talk about that more in person, but I think overall these are really great starts. And I think any one of these you could be have a really successful project. All right, then we'll go to Grace's. Back out a little bit. I always like to see people's art boards and all that fun stuff, because I know mine is usually a mess. I think this is a really good starting point. I think depending on what you're trying to do, I see this kind of like textured pattern here. If you were going to sort of make like this be sort of a sponge and it's soaking up the water, there's a couple different things you could do. You could like, I like the softness of this blue gradient you have. Again, we might be able to add like a transparency to the outside, so it has a more fade to white, and this might look a little bit more like a natural fade, so it's more fluid, for lack of a better word. And if this was going to be like a sponge and it was absorbing, again, maybe have you copy and paste, and then have, use your Pathfinder and cut here, give or take about halfway down the word, so you just have the bottom half of the word, and you could add a gradient to just that bottom part. But if you added a little bit of that blue, so it looked like it was like soaking up the water, so it went from like a blue to this dark yellowish and then up. And then I'm not sure if you're going to add these as like, that's why I was thinking sponge, because I wasn't sure if these were like the holes of the sponge or whatever. But again, I think overall a really, really good start. And nice work with the gradients, nice work with a little bit of a warp to give it a little bit of a roundness, a little bit of dimension. We could add, you could even add a shadow if you wanted to. If you wanted to have your absorb casting a shadow, things like that. And then if I'm reading this wrong and it's the opposite way, which I don't think it is, but if it's the opposite way where it's kind of falling into a puddle sort of to get absorbed, you can kind of do the opposite of all of what I was saying, but you can still play with the gradients in a similar way, and again add the blue to the yellow and things like that to give a little bit more of a natural sort of progression. I also like some of the play that you did with especially this one. It's kind of got a little bit of a sort of a squishier feel. I like the font choice works really well. I think playing with that a little bit as well. If you wanted to, if that's somewhere where you're going, I think is a good place to go. Where you get a little bit of legibility issues. Your font choice here kind of has that kind of like soft sort of squishy quality. I think works well. I think you could split the difference if you were working with that. But yeah, I think again overall super strong start. And then lastly, Laura's bounce. I know we took a look at this in class earlier. Again, I think you have a really strong start. I was trying to see. Nope, there it is. Okay. There it is. I was having trouble selecting that for some reason. Yeah, we kind of talked about having the basketball really look like it's moving. Again, I think this is a really good start with using that. I think you could kind of, maybe not push that is the right word, but we talked about blends in class a little bit, and I can show you as well if you wanted to. I'm just going to copy this over here and then ungroup. So if you wanted to do sort of a similar thing where you have this effect in theory, and what I'll do is I'm going to copy this object here. Copy this object here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle opacities. Working with blends and effects I think can be tricky. We can play around with it in class, but for the purposes of showing you here, I'll just do a quick opacity change. We'll go to here, opacity, drop that down to, we'll say 24-ish, 25, that's what I was trying to hit. And then we can go from your ball to the other ball, select both of them, and then we'll go to our blend options, And here's where we can do the specified steps or smooth. So I'm going to do steps, and I'm actually going to do 12 and see what happens. I'm going to hit OK. And then we go back to blend, and we make our blend. All right, maybe that's a lot, but you get the idea. And then you can kind of reverse. You have your transparencies. You can kind of reverse this direction as well by adjusting your positioning. Oops, I didn't realize I did that. You can adjust your positioning. You can expand under object. Let's expand this appearance. And then it's still grouped. So now we have all of that ungrouped. So just by pushing this to the top, and again, you would want to reorder, but you get the idea. Maybe 12 is a little bit too much, but you can certainly adjust if you wanted to make your basketball kind of more bouncy. You get that crazy. That's way too many, but you get the idea. You can have these sort of crazy steps from even just playing with transparency to the solid ball, and you can do that as well with the letters. I like the blur that you put on it. I might soften it even a little bit more, or again doing a copy and paste. And if you had one, I'm going to paste in front, and then I'm going to trash the blur on that one, so that should, there we go. So that should be just solid. So you can even, if you really wanted to, kind of play around with opacities on your bottom one and drop it down a little bit. And again, sort of, if you softened that blur a little bit, you could get, playing with that drop shadow, or even distorting that drop shadow a little bit, and playing around with that transparency. You could kind of get like a fuzziness, if that was kind of what you were going for, as well. And maybe even instead of just vertically, because you have vertical and horizontal action going on with the basketballs, you could have a little bit more horizontal action going on with your letters. But again, I think really super strong start for all of these on part one, and well done overall.